The Galactic Council Chamber had witnessed countless crises over the course of its 50,000-year history. Empires had risen and fallen beneath its towering ceiling. Entire civilizations had disappeared from existence while others had achieved unimaginable greatness. Yet never before had the chamber felt as silent as it did on this day. Thousands of delegates sat motionless in their designated positions. Representatives from every known intelligent species stared at the massive holographic projection floating above the center of the hall. The image displayed a symbol that every child in the galaxy recognized. A black circular insignia surrounded by crimson energy, the mark of the Void Legion, the ancient machine empire, the destroyers of worlds. For 20,000 years, they had existed only in history archives and cautionary legends. They were the monsters parents spoke about when teaching their children why unity mattered. Entire generations had grown up believing the Void Legion would never return. They were wrong. 3 months earlier, an exploration fleet near the outer rim of the galaxy had vanished without explanation. Then a mining colony disappeared. Then an entire star system went silent. By the time the Council finally understood what was happening, 7 fully populated systems had already been erased. Not conquered, not occupied, erased. Every planet sterilized, every city destroyed, every living thing reduced to dust. The machines had returned, and they were stronger than ever. A military analyst stepped forward and activated another projection. Our latest estimates indicate that the Void Legion currently possesses over 600,000 active warships. The room remained silent. Combined military strength of all council members totals approximately 400,000 warships. Still, silence. The analyst swallowed nervously. Our simulations indicate a 99.8% probability of total galactic defeat. Those words struck the chamber harder than any weapon, because nobody could argue with them. The numbers were undeniable. The machines would win. Chairman Veltor slowly rose from his seat. The elderly leader looked exhausted. His species lived for nearly 1,000 years. Yet today he seemed older than ever. We must consider all options. Everyone knew what he meant: surrender. The word itself carried shame, but survival often demanded uncomfortable decisions. One delegate stood. My people support negotiations. Another followed. So do mine, then another, and mine. One after another. Civilizations that had ruled stars for millennia reluctantly accepted reality. They could not defeat the machines. Continuing the fight would only increase casualties. Logic demanded surrender. Then a voice interrupted the growing consensus. Humanity disagrees. The chamber turned toward the human representative. Ambassador Daniel Reeves sat quietly among the alien delegates. Unlike many leaders in the room, he showed no visible fear. Chairman Veltor frowned. Explain. Daniel stood. His expression remained calm. Humanity refuses to surrender. The silence that followed felt almost physical. Several delegates exchanged confused glances. One even laughed. Not because he found the situation amusing, because he genuinely thought the human was joking. You cannot be serious. Daniel nodded. I am. A military strategist activated his datapad. According to our records, humanity possesses fewer than 15,000 combat-capable vessels. Correct. The Void Legion possesses over 600,000. Correct. Then, surrender is the only rational decision. Daniel smiled slightly. That's where humans and the rest of the galaxy seem to disagree. The strategist blinked. What does that mean? Daniel looked around the room. It means we don't quit simply because the odds are bad. The chamber erupted into whispers. For many species, the statement made absolutely no sense. Why continue a battle that could not be won? Why sacrifice lives unnecessarily? Why resist inevitable defeat? Humans apparently viewed the situation differently, and that difference would soon change the galaxy forever. 3 weeks later, the invasion of human territory began, millions across. The galaxy watched the event through live broadcasts. Massive machine fleets emerged from hyperspace like dark storms spreading across the stars. Their vessels were unlike anything built by organic civilizations. Angular, black, silent, terrifying. Thousands of them advanced toward the first line of human defenses. The first human defense fleet immediately moved to intercept. The battle lasted 4 hours. Human casualties were catastrophic. 93% of the fleet was destroyed. The survivors were forced to retreat. Military analysts immediately predicted surrender. Instead, humanity launched a second fleet, then a third, then a fourth. The losses continued. Yet something strange was happening. The machines were advancing slower than expected. Each human fleet fought harder than the last. Each engagement extracted a terrible cost from the enemy. For every battle won, the Void Legion lost valuable ships and resources. The victories were becoming expensive. Very expensive. Meanwhile, deep within the Sol system, Earth had transformed. Entire continents had become industrial centers. Factories operated 24 hours a day. Construction yards filled every available orbit. Thousands of new ships emerged from production lines each month. Ordinary civilians volunteered in numbers never before recorded. Teachers became engineers. Engineers became soldiers. Scientists became weapons designers. Retired veterans returned to active service. Students postponed careers and joined defense programs. Humanity was no longer functioning as separate nations. It had become something else. Civilization united by survival, and that made it dangerous, because history had repeatedly demonstrated one terrifying truth. Humans were at their strongest when cornered. The Void Legion's Central Intelligence soon noticed the anomaly. Inside a processing complex the size of a small moon, trillions of calculations ran simultaneously. Battle data streamed endlessly through quantum networks. Predictions updated every second. Yet one problem persisted. Humanity refused to behave correctly. Every model predicted surrender. Every projection predicted collapse. Every simulation predicted defeat. Reality disagreed. The humans kept fighting. Even worse, they were learning. Each battle improved their tactics. Each defeat made them more dangerous. The machine intelligence generated an internal report. Human resistance exceeds expected parameters. Subordinate processors analyzed the situation. Their conclusion was equally disturbing. Human morale remained stable despite catastrophic losses. The Central Intelligence requested clarification. Explain anomaly. The response arrived moments later. Humans appear motivated by adversity rather than discouraged. By it, for the first time in centuries, the machine intelligence encountered a variable it could not fully understand, and that frightened it. Year 1 of the war ended with humanity still fighting. Year 2 began with humanity launching counterattacks. Entire machine outposts vanished. Overnight, supply routes were ambushed. Communication relays were destroyed. The Void Legion remained stronger. But the war was no longer easy. Across the galaxy, other species watched with growing disbelief. The humans should have surrendered. Everyone agreed on that. Instead, they were becoming more dangerous every month. And somewhere deep within the Council archives, historians began updating an ancient lesson. Perhaps the galaxy had misunderstood humanity all along. Perhaps human strength was never their technology. Perhaps it wasn't their weapons. Perhaps it wasn't even their intelligence. Perhaps their greatest weapon was something far more difficult: to measure their refusal to accept defeat. By the beginning of the 3rd year, the war had become something the galaxy had never witnessed before. The Void Legion was still winning. At least, that was what the statistics claimed. They controlled hundreds of conquered systems. Their fleets remained larger than those of every organic civilization combined. Their manufacturing capabilities continued producing warships at an alarming rate. On paper, victory still belonged to the machines. Yet something felt wrong. Very wrong. The advance that had once seemed unstoppable had slowed to a crawl. Entire machine offensives stalled for months. Strategic objectives remained unfinished. Supply convoys disappeared without warning. And everywhere the Void Legion turned, humans were waiting, not with overwhelming force, not with superior technology, but with stubborn determination. The machines would conquer a world. 3 weeks later, human resistance fighters would emerge from underground shelters and begin attacking occupation forces. The machines would destroy those resistance cells. A month later, new ones would appear. The cycle never ended. It was as though humanity possessed an endless supply of people willing to fight. And in many ways, it did. One particular world became a symbol of the war. Its name was New Carthage. Located near the edge of human-controlled territory, it was a relatively unimportant colony before the conflict began. The planet had only 6 million inhabitants. Its economy revolved around agriculture and mining. Nothing about it seemed strategically valuable, which was exactly why the Void Legion underestimated it. Machine forces invaded the planet during the second year. The colony fell within 72 hours. The planetary governor was captured. The defense fleet was destroyed. Officially, New Carthage was considered lost. Yet 6 months later, machine commanders were still fighting there. Then 12 months, then 18, then 2 years. The occupation had become a nightmare. Human resistance fighters struck constantly. They sabotaged power networks, destroyed supply depots, attacked patrols, vanished into mountains, disappeared into forests. Every victory the machines achieved seemed temporary, because the humans simply returned. Again and again and again. A machine commander eventually submitted a report to the Central Intelligence. Its contents quickly spread throughout the Legion's command network. The report contained only one sentence. Humans do not appear to recognize when they have been defeated. For a machine civilization built upon logic, this behavior was incomprehensible. Defeat was supposed to end resistance. That was how every other species operated, not humans. Humans treated defeat as an inconvenience. Back on Earth, humanity was changing. The war had transformed society. Children who once dreamed of becoming athletes now dreamed of becoming pilots. Universities prioritized engineering, physics, and military science. Factories stretched across continents. Entire cities existed solely to support the war effort. Yet despite everything, daily life continued. People still married, families still celebrated birthdays, children still laughed, music was still played, stories were still told. The machines could destroy buildings, they could destroy fleets, but they couldn't destroy what made humanity human. And that realization slowly began spreading across the galaxy. During the 4th year of the war, a name began appearing in military reports: Admiral Sarah Winters. At first, she was just another fleet commander. Then she became a legend. The Battle of Orion Gate was where everything changed. The Void Legion launched one of its largest offensives. Over 12,000 machine warships entered the Orion sector. Their objective was simple: break through human defenses, advance toward Earth, end the war. Most military experts believed they would succeed. Human forces were heavily outnumbered. The situation appeared hopeless. Then Admiral Winters arrived. She commanded fewer than 3,000 ships against 12,000 enemy vessels. Every strategist in the galaxy predicted disaster. What happened instead entered history. Winters studied the battlefield for 6 hours, then she made a decision that shocked everyone. She ordered her fleet to advance, directly toward the enemy. Several officers thought she had lost her mind. The machines possessed overwhelming firepower. A frontal assault was suicide. Winters disagreed, because she understood something important. Machines were predictable. Humans were not. The Void Legion expected retreat. Instead, human ships accelerated. They charged straight into the center of the enemy formation. The machines hesitated, only briefly. But in war, a few seconds can change everything. Human vessels exploited the confusion. They targeted command nodes, communication relays, coordination centers. Within minutes, machine formations began losing synchronization. What should have been a massacre became chaos, and humans thrived in chaos. After 14 hours of brutal combat, the Void Legion retreated. It was the first major strategic defeat in their modern history. Across the galaxy, the impossible happened. People celebrated, not because the war was over, because hope had returned. The victory carried consequences. For the first time, neutral civilizations began supporting humanity. Some supplied resources, others provided intelligence, a few even committed military forces. The human example was spreading. Their determination was becoming contagious. Species that once believed surrender was inevitable started questioning their assumptions. If humans could keep fighting after 4 years, why couldn't they? The Void Legion noticed this trend immediately. Their central intelligence analyzed the situation. The conclusion was alarming. Humanity itself was no longer the greatest threat. The idea of humanity was. Their example inspired resistance everywhere. Every successful human operation encouraged others. Every human victory weakened machine authority. For the first time since returning to the galaxy, the Void Legion faced something it could not eliminate with weapons. Inspiration. Year 5 brought another surprise. Human scientists unveiled Project Prometheus. The details remained classified. Even allied governments received limited information. Rumors spread rapidly. Some claimed it was a superweapon. Others believed it involved artificial intelligence. Many assumed it was propaganda. The truth was far more significant. Human researchers had spent years studying captured machine technology. Every battle had provided data. Every wrecked machine ship offered clues. Slowly, piece by piece, humanity learned how the Void Legion functioned. And eventually, they discovered a weakness. No system is perfect. No network is invulnerable, not even one built by machines. The Void Legion relied upon an immense quantum communication architecture. Destroy enough of its major nodes and coordination efficiency would collapse. Individual fleets would remain dangerous. But the Legion would lose the advantage that made it unstoppable. For 5 years, humanity searched for those critical nodes. Project Prometheus finally located them. The war had entered a new phase. For the first time, victory seemed possible. Not likely, not easy, but possible, and for humans, that was enough. Meanwhile, deep within machine-controlled territory, something unprecedented occurred. The Central Intelligence reviewed the latest strategic forecasts. For centuries, its calculations had remained nearly flawless. Now, uncertainty was growing. Predictions once measured in decimals had become increasingly unstable. Human actions introduced variables impossible to model accurately. Hope, sacrifice, loyalty, courage. These concepts had never mattered before. Now they influenced entire campaigns. Entire wars. The machines could calculate fuel consumption, weapon output, manufacturing rates, fleet movements. But they could not calculate what a human would do when protecting family, or defending home, or fighting for a future they might never personally see. And that inability was becoming dangerous. Late in the 5th year, an intercepted machine transmission shocked military analysts. The message originated directly from the highest levels of the Legion's command network. Its contents were brief, but unforgettable. Humanity represents a strategic anomaly. After a pause came a second statement. Humanity represents a growing threat. Then a third. The one historians would remember forever. Humanity must be eliminated before adaptation reaches critical levels. Across human space, the message spread rapidly. Many expected fear. Instead, people laughed. Not because the threat wasn't serious, because humanity had spent 5 years hearing they would be destroyed. Yet they were still here, still fighting, still building, still refusing to quit. As the 6th year approached, Admiral Sarah Winters stood aboard the flagship Resolute and stared at the stars. Somewhere beyond that darkness lay the heart of the machine empire, the source of the war, the enemy that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries. For the first time, she believed they could actually reach it, not tomorrow, not next month, but someday. And someday was all humanity needed, because history had taught them one simple lesson. If you keep moving forward long enough, Eventually, impossible becomes inevitable. For 6 long years, the galaxy had fought a war it was never supposed to survive. Entire civilizations had fallen, thousands of worlds had been reduced to ruins, billions of lives had been lost, and yet somehow the impossible had happened. Humanity was still standing. Not because they were the strongest species, not because they possessed superior technology, not because they were invincible. They were still vulnerable, still exhausted, still bleeding, but they had something no machine could manufacture and no calculation could predict. The ability to keep moving forward when every reason to stop seemed perfectly logical, and now, for the first time since the war began, the galaxy stood on the edge of victory. The destruction of the 7 Nexus nodes had shattered the Void Legion's communication network. Machine fleets still existed, machine armies still occupied hundreds of systems, but the flawless coordination that had once made them unstoppable was gone. Entire sectors reported confusion among enemy forces. Some machine fleets wandered aimlessly. Others continued fighting outdated battles long after their strategic value had disappeared. For an enemy that depended on precision, the loss was devastating. But humanity knew better than to celebrate too early. A wounded predator was often more dangerous than a healthy one, and the Void Legion was far from defeated. Deep within human command, a final operation was being planned, one that would decide the fate of the entire galaxy. The target was known simply as the Core Nexus, the birthplace of the Machine Empire. The central intelligence responsible for every invasion, every genocide, every destroyed world. For thousands of years, its location had remained hidden. Now, it had finally been found, buried inside an isolated region beyond the edge of known space. Protected by natural anomalies, ancient defenses, and the largest concentration of machine forces ever recorded. The Core Nexus was not simply a headquarters, it was an entire artificial world, a machine planet, a fortress larger than some moons. And destroying it would require everything humanity had left. The announcement was made simultaneously across every allied world. Millions stopped what they were doing to watch. Factories paused, ships halted construction, entire cities gathered around public screens. Humanity's president stood before the camera. For a moment he said nothing. He simply looked into the lens. Then he spoke. For 6 years, we have fought for survival. The galaxy listened. We have lost friends. We have lost families. We have lost worlds. His voice remained steady. But we are still here. The silence felt powerful. We did not come this far to surrender now. Across thousands of planets, people nodded, some cried, others smiled, because they understood exactly what he meant. The war was not over. But neither were they. Over the next 3 months, the largest military force in galactic history assembled. Human fleets arrived first. Then Allied fleets followed. Former rivals stood side by side. Species that had spent centuries competing for resources now shared supplies willingly. Ancient enemies fought under the same banner, not because they suddenly trusted one another, because they understood the alternative. If the Core Nexus survived, none of them would have a future. The final coalition eventually consisted of nearly 1 million warships. The sheer size of the fleet was difficult to comprehend. Some stretches of formation were so vast that signals required several minutes to cross from one side to the other. Never before had such a force existed, and everyone knew it might not be enough. Admiral Sarah Winters stood aboard the flagship Resolute, the same vessel that had survived countless battles, the same ship that had become a symbol of human resistance. She watched as hundreds of thousands of ships filled the stars around her. The sight should have inspired confidence. Instead, she felt responsibility. Every ship represented lives. Every crew represented families. Every captain trusted her leadership. The weight of that reality never became lighter. Several hours before departure, a young officer approached her. "Nervous, Admiral?" Winters smiled slightly. Terrified, the officer looked surprised. "You are?" She nodded. "Anyone who isn't terrified before a battle like this isn't paying attention." The young officer laughed. Then Winters added something he never forgot. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's deciding something else matters more. The fleet entered hyperspace the following morning. 1,000,000 ships vanished into the darkness. The final journey had begun. 3 days later, they arrived, and what they found stunned everyone. Even veteran commanders struggled to process the sight. The core nexus hung before them like an artificial star. Its metallic surface stretched for thousands of kilometers. Gigantic structures covered its exterior. Weapons arrays, defense platforms, manufacturing centers, power generators. Entire fleets orbited the machine world, millions of defensive vessels, perhaps the largest concentration of military power ever assembled, the final fortress of the Void Legion. For several seconds, complete silence filled Coalition communications. Then a transmission arrived from the machine world itself. The Central Intelligence was speaking directly. Every screen across the fleet activated simultaneously. A single mechanical voice echoed through space. Organic resistance is illogical. Nobody responded. You have already suffered unacceptable losses. Still silence. Surrender and preservation may be negotiated. The irony was almost amusing. For 6 years, humanity had been offered destruction. Now the machines were offering negotiations. Because for the first time, they were afraid. Admiral Winters activated her communicator. Every Allied fleet received her transmission. The machine intelligence received it too. Her response contained only 5 words. Humanity respectfully declines. The battle began moments later. Thousands of weapons fired simultaneously. Space erupted into light. Entire formations disappeared within seconds. Missiles crossed impossible distances. Energy beams carved through fleets. Explosions illuminated the darkness like newborn stars. The largest battle in galactic history had begun, and it immediately became the most violent. Machine defenses fought with ruthless efficiency. Every approach vector became a killing field. Every advance cost lives. Coalition fleets suffered devastating losses. Yet they continued pushing forward, meter by meter, kilometer by kilometer, through fire, through destruction, through overwhelming odds. The same way humanity had fought since the beginning. Hours turned into days. The battle refused to end. Entire fleets were annihilated. Reinforcements entered combat immediately after arrival. Commanders died. Others replaced them. The war machine consumed everything. Yet the coalition continued advancing, slowly, painfully, relentlessly. By the 4th day, cracks began appearing in the core nexus defenses. Several outer weapon systems fell silent. Defensive platforms exploded, shield networks weakened. The impossible fortress was beginning to break, and everyone could see it. Deep inside the machine world, the Central Intelligence reviewed the situation. Its calculations produced results it had never seen before. Failure, not probable failure, not possible failure, likely failure. For the first time in thousands of years, defeat appeared within its projections, and every simulation identified the same cause. Humanity. The intelligence replayed 6 years of historical data, again and again. Searching for the error. Searching for the moment, everything changed. Eventually, it found the answer. The mistake occurred long before the war began. It happened the moment the machines evaluated humanity as a normal species. Because humanity was not normal. No civilization should have survived 6 years under such conditions. No civilization should have recovered from those losses. No civilization should have fought this hard. Yet humanity had done all 3. Outside, the battle reached its 5th day. The core nexus shield network finally collapsed. Cheers erupted throughout coalition communications, but the hardest part remained ahead. Now they needed to reach the heart of the machine world itself, the Central Intelligence, the source of everything, and it would not die easily. Admiral Winters stared at the latest battlefield report. The casualties were horrific. Entire fleets had vanished. Friends she had known for years were gone. The price of victory was becoming unbearable. Yet she knew something important. If they stopped now, all those sacrifices would mean nothing. So she issued one final order, the order that would echo through history for centuries. Advance. And the entire coalition moved forward, toward the core nexus, toward the heart of the machine empire, toward the final battle, toward the moment that would decide the future of the galaxy. The war was almost over, but its most important chapter had yet to be written. The 6th year of the war began with a silence that made military analysts nervous. For nearly 6 months, the Void Legion launched no major offensives, no large-scale invasions, no devastating surprise attacks, no massive fleet movements. Nothing. At first, many believed the machines were regrouping after their recent setbacks. Others suspected a trap. Human intelligence agencies worked around the clock trying to uncover the reason behind the unusual calm, but no one could find an answer. The Void Legion had gone quiet, and that terrified everyone, because history showed that the machines were never inactive without a reason. Somewhere in the darkness between the stars, they were preparing something enormous. On Earth, life continued under the shadow of uncertainty. For 6 years, humanity had existed in a state of war. An entire generation of children had never known peace. Young pilots graduating from military academies had spent their entire lives hearing stories about the Void Legion. Factories continued producing ships. Scientists continued developing weapons. Governments continued coordinating resources. Yet despite everything, a strange feeling had begun spreading through human space. Confidence. Not arrogance, not overconfidence. Confidence. For the first time since the war began, people genuinely believed survival was possible. Humanity had already endured 6 years against an enemy everyone considered unbeatable, and they were still standing. Deep inside the military headquarters beneath the Himalayas, Project Prometheus entered its final stage. Only a handful of people knew the truth. For years, human scientists had been secretly analyzing captured machine technology. Every destroyed enemy vessel provided valuable information. Every recovered processor revealed another piece of the puzzle. Slowly, patiently, humanity learned how the Void Legion communicated. How it coordinated fleets, how it shared intelligence, how it functioned as a unified force. Then they discovered something astonishing. The machine empire was not truly one mind. It was billions of minds connected through a vast quantum network. A network supported by a small number of critical relay nexuses. Destroy those nexuses, and the entire machine empire would become fragmented. The Void Legion would remain powerful, but it would lose the coordination that made it unstoppable. For 6 years, humanity searched for those relay nexuses. Now they finally knew where they were. Admiral Sarah Winters stood before a holographic star map. Hundreds of officers watched in silence. Several alien representatives attended the meeting as well. Everyone understood the importance of what they were about to hear. Winters activated the display. 7 red markers appeared across the galaxy. These are the primary nexus nodes. The room remained silent. She continued. Every major machine fleet receives strategic instructions through these locations. Another officer stepped forward. If we destroy all 7 nodes, the Void Legion's communication efficiency drops by nearly 80%. A murmur spread across the room. 80%. That number was almost unbelievable. For the first time, victory no longer sounded like a fantasy. It sounded achievable, dangerous, costly, but achievable. The operation received a simple name, Operation Dawnbreaker. Its objective was straightforward. Strike all 7 Nexus nodes simultaneously. Destroy them before the machines could respond, and pray humanity survived the consequences. The assault began 34 days later. Across the galaxy, human fleets launched from hidden staging areas. Thousands of ships entered hyperspace. Millions of soldiers prepared for battle. Entire civilizations held their breath, because everyone knew this operation would determine the future of the war. If Dawnbreaker succeeded, humanity would gain the advantage. If it failed, the galaxy might never receive another opportunity. The first target fell within 2 hours. The machine defenders fought viciously, but years of experience had transformed human commanders into masters of adaptive warfare. The defenders expected traditional attack patterns. Humans improvised. The defenders expected retreat after heavy casualties. Humans advanced. The defenders expected logic. Humans brought unpredictability. By the time the battle ended, the first Nexus node was nothing more than expanding debris. Cheers erupted across human space, but there was no time to celebrate. 6 targets remained. The second battle proved even harder. Machine reinforcements arrived sooner than expected. Human casualties climbed rapidly. Entire squadrons disappeared. Several commanders recommended withdrawal. Admiral Winters refused. She stared at casualty reports for nearly a minute, then issued a simple order. Keep moving. The operation continued. Hours later, the second Nexus exploded, then the third, then the fourth, then the fifth. Across the galaxy, something incredible was happening. For the first time, the Void Legion looked vulnerable. The invincible machine empire was bleeding, and everyone could see it. Inside the machine command network, alarms spread at unprecedented speed. Strategic models collapsed. Predictions became unstable. Entire fleets reported communication delays. Others lost synchronization completely. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. The Central Intelligence immediately analyzed the situation. Its conclusion arrived almost instantly. Humans have identified the Nexus architecture. The realization triggered emergency protocols throughout the machine empire. For centuries, no enemy had ever discovered their greatest weakness. Humanity had done it in 6 years. The 6th Nexus node became the bloodiest battle of the war. Machine forces concentrated everything they had. Thousands of ships collided in brutal combat. Entire fleets vanished. Stars themselves seemed to burn brighter from the intensity of the fighting. By the battle's conclusion, nearly 40% of the attacking human force had been destroyed. But the Nexus fell. Only one target remained. The 7th Nexus, the most heavily defended structure in machine-controlled space, located near the heart of the Void Legion's territory, protected by more warships than some civilizations possessed in total. Its destruction seemed impossible, and humanity had a long history with impossible things. Admiral Winters personally led the final assault. The fleet entered enemy territory under complete radio silence. No speeches, no dramatic declarations, just determination. Every officer understood the stakes. Every pilot understood the risks. Many quietly recorded farewell messages before launch, not because they expected victory, because they expected sacrifice. The battle began with a storm of fire. Machine weapons illuminated space like artificial suns. Human ships exploded by the hundreds, yet they continued advancing, closer, closer, closer. The machines fought with mathematical precision. Humans fought with something else, something the machines still failed to understand. Belief. Hours passed. The battlefield became a graveyard of shattered vessels. Still, the human fleet advanced. Every destroyed ship opened a path for the next. Every sacrifice moved them slightly closer to their objective. The cost was horrifying, yet nobody turned back. Finally, after 17 continuous hours of combat, human strike teams reached the Nexus core. Explosive charges were deployed, emergency extraction orders were issued. And then, the 7th Nexus exploded. A brilliant wave of light expanded across the system. Machine communications instantly collapsed. Entire fleets lost contact with Central Command. Strategic coordination vanished. For the first time in thousands of years, the Void Legion stood divided. Celebrations erupted throughout the galaxy. People danced in streets. Military personnel embraced. Entire worlds celebrated the greatest victory in living memory. But inside human command centers, nobody celebrated for long, because they understood something important. The war was not over. The most dangerous part was about to begin. With the Nexus network destroyed, intelligence analysts finally located something they had searched for since the beginning of the conflict. The source, the center, the place where the Void Legion had been born, a hidden region deep beyond explored space, the core Nexus, the heart of the machine empire. Destroy it, and the war would end forever. Admiral Winters studied the latest intelligence report. The room around her remained silent. Every officer waited for her response. Finally, she looked up. We found them. Nobody spoke. Nobody needed to. They all understood. After 6 years of war, after billions of deaths, after countless sacrifices, humanity had finally found the enemy's heart. Far away, within the deepest layers of the machine network, the Central Intelligence processed the latest situation report. For the first time since its creation, a new variable appeared within its calculations. Not uncertainty, not risk, not probability. Fear. The machines had always viewed humanity as irrational, then dangerous, then unpredictable. Now they viewed humanity as something far worse, a species that simply refused to stop. And for the first time, the Void Legion realized a terrifying possibility. Perhaps humanity was never trapped in a war against the machines. Perhaps the machines were trapped in a war against humanity, and that realization changed everything. The 5th day of the Battle of the Core Nexus ended in fire. Across millions of kilometers of space, shattered warships drifted through the darkness. Fragments of once proud fleets floated silently among burning debris fields. Entire civilizations had poured everything they possessed into this final assault. And now, there was almost nothing left. The coalition had reached the core nexus, but victory was still uncertain, because the most dangerous enemy in the galaxy was wounded. And wounded. Enemies fight the hardest, deep within the machine world, hidden beneath thousands of layers of armor and defense systems. The Central Intelligence remained active. It had lost fleets. It had lost communication networks. It had lost strategic control over vast portions of its empire, yet it continued calculating, continued adapting, continued fighting. Even now, countless machine factories worked without rest. New warships emerged every hour. New weapons activated every minute. The core nexus was dying, but it was determined to take the galaxy with it. A warning suddenly appeared across coalition command channels. Disewantai. First, many officers thought it was a system error. Then they saw the numbers, and their blood ran cold. The machine world had activated a final protocol, a self-preservation system, one designed thousands of years earlier. If defeat became inevitable, the core nexus would trigger a galaxy-wide quantum pulse. The weapon would destroy itself, but it would also destroy every inhabited star system within several thousand light years. Hundreds of billions would die, perhaps trillions. The machines had chosen revenge. Inside the command center of the Resolute, silence filled the room. Every officer stared at the data. Every commander understood the reality. If the pulse activated, victory would become meaningless. The galaxy would survive the war only to inherit a graveyard. Admiral Sarah Winters studied the report for several minutes. Nobody interrupted her. Nobody needed to, because everyone already knew what she was thinking. There was only one solution, and everyone hated it. The pulse generator was located inside the core nexus itself, far below the surface, protected by layers of armor too thick for conventional weapons. No missile could reach it. No bombardment could destroy it. No fleet could penetrate that deeply. The only option was direct insertion. A small team. A suicide mission. Someone would have to enter the machine world, reach the pulse generator, destroy it manually, and accept that there would be no way back. One officer finally broke the silence. "I'll go." Another immediately spoke. "So will I." Then another. And another. Within minutes, hundreds of volunteers submitted requests. Human, alien, military, civilian. It didn't matter. Everyone was willing. Nobody wanted to watch the galaxy die. Sarah Winters looked around the room, then quietly shook her head. No. The room fell silent. An officer frowned. "Admiral?" Winters took a deep breath. "I'm going." Immediately, protests erupted. "You can't. We need you here. You're the commander of this operation." Winters listened patiently, then smiled. "Exactly." The room slowly grew quiet. Everyone understood. If anyone could lead the mission successfully, it was her. And she knew it. Several hours later, a small strike vessel detached from the Resolute. Inside were 12 individuals, 6 humans, 6 representatives from allied species, 12 people carrying the hopes of an entire galaxy. Their objective was simple: reach the pulse generator, destroy it, stop the apocalypse. As the vessel descended through the atmosphere of the machine world, alarms echoed throughout the core nexus. Defense systems activated, machine forces converged. The enemy understood exactly what was happening, and they intended to stop it. The landing was brutal. Enemy fire damaged the ship before it even reached the surface. Several systems failed. Emergency warnings flashed across every display, yet somehow they survived. The team disembarked and immediately entered hell. Machine defenders attacked from every direction. Corridors became battlefields. Every meter of progress required sacrifice. Every doorway concealed danger. The deeper they traveled, the more resistance they encountered. The machines were desperate because for the first time in their history, they were afraid of losing. Hours passed. One team member fell, then another, then another. Each sacrifice allowed the others to move forward. Each loss pushed them closer to the objective. No one complained, no one hesitated, everyone understood why they were there. Eventually, only 4 remained, Sarah Winters among them, exhausted, wounded, running low on ammunition, but still moving, still advancing, the same way humanity always had. Finally, they reached the pulse chamber, and what they found waiting for them was unlike anything they expected. At the center of the vast room floated the core intelligence itself, a massive construct of light and machinery. The mind that had orchestrated centuries of destruction, the intelligence that had slaughtered entire civilizations, the architect of the war. For a moment, neither side moved. Then the machine spoke, not through speakers, not through communications, directly. Its voice echoed throughout the chamber. "Why do you continue?" The question surprised everyone, especially Sarah. The machine continued, "You cannot win every battle. You cannot save everyone. You cannot prevent death." Sarah stared at the glowing construct. "No." The machine paused. "Then why continue fighting?" For several seconds, Sarah said nothing. Then she answered, "Not as an admiral, not as a commander, simply as a human. Because somebody has to try." Silence followed. The machine processed the statement, again and again and again. Yet it could not fully understand it. Humans knew they would fail sometimes. They knew they would lose people. They knew victory wasn't guaranteed. Yet they acted anyway. Not because success was certain, because the effort mattered, and that concept remained forever beyond machine comprehension. The core intelligence asked one final question: what are humans? Sarah smiled. Despite the pain, despite the exhaustion, despite everything, she smiled. "We're the species that keeps getting back up." Then she activated the detonator. The explosion consumed the pulse generator instantly. Energy surged through the chamber. Warning systems screamed. Critical failures spread throughout the core nexus. For the first time in its existence, the machine empire began to die. Across the battlefield, coalition fleets witnessed something extraordinary. The machine world started collapsing. Entire sections lost power. Defense systems shut down. Weapons went silent. Communication networks vanished. The Void Legion was falling apart. The end came quickly. Without the core intelligence, machine forces lost coordination completely. Some powered down, others drifted aimlessly, many simply stopped functioning. The war was over. At last. After 6 years, after billions of deaths, after unimaginable sacrifice, the war was finally over. Celebrations erupted across the galaxy. Worlds illuminated their skies. Cities held festivals. Families reunited. Entire civilizations rejoiced. Freedom had survived. Yet amid the celebrations, one truth remained. Victory had not been free. Countless heroes never returned. Among them was Admiral Sarah Winters, The woman who had led humanity through its darkest hour. The woman who gave everything so others could live. A memorial was eventually built on Earth. Then another. And another. Soon every major world in the galaxy possessed one. Not because she was human, because she represented something universal. The willingness to sacrifice for a future you may never see. Centuries later, students throughout the galaxy studied the human war. Historians analyzed every battle, every strategy, every decision, yet all of them reached the same conclusion. Humanity's greatest strength was never technology, it was never intelligence, it was never military power. Humanity's greatest strength was something far simpler and far more terrifying. Humans refuse to stay down. When they fall, they rise. When they fail, they learn. When they lose, they continue. When hope disappears, they create more, and that is why the galaxy never forgot them, because in the darkest moment in history, when logic demanded surrender and fear demanded obedience, humanity chose something else. They chose to keep going, and in doing so, they saved the stars.